entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals who seek excellence, bringing the business classroom to you. It's the Business Builders Show. Here's Marty Wolff.
We still got a long way to go. Yes, we all got a long way to go.
Welcome to the Business Builders Show with Marty Wolff, and today with our guest host, J. Kelly Hoey. Along with Kelly and our executive producer, D.C. Taylor, we will be your guides on this learning journey. To learn more about Kelly, check out her website at jkellyhoey.co. That's jkellyhoey.co. Okay, Kelly, let's get the conversation going.
Hey, thanks, Marty. This is Kelly Hoey, and I am thrilled to have back on the Business Builder Show for a second interview is Stephanie Sperlin, Vice President, Workplace Solutions at Capital One. And we're talking about Capital One's Work Environment Survey in its third year. We're talking about the 2019 results. Stephanie, welcome back. What now, as I said, third year, what has surprised you in this year's survey's results?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. It's great to be back. So, what really jumped out at this year in the survey results was, last episode, we talked about really the shift from flexibility to adaptability. And that just really surprised me that seeing that desire for a dynamic and adaptable or multifunctional workplace just really popped to the top. And then also, though, kind of a different definition around flexibility, that people are craving for the flexibility around hours and schedules and being able to make those choices around how they're using their time and when and where and how they work. So that was just really interesting to see that shift from a foundational element to really a more dynamic element. Also, what really popped out was the thought, and it's a third year where we're seeing over half of people believe that design is equally important or more important than location, which debunks a little bit of the traditional location for real estate. And so seeing that continued theme is just really encouraging as, companies have locations in more suburban markets, but are able to kind of create an urban feeling. And so that really popped out. And then I think just the desire for professionals to really be considered as a holistic associate or employee in their workplace and being able to support well-being in a really integrated way.
That's amazing. And I was going to say, for listeners, if you didn't listen to the first interview with Steph, go back and listen to it. We talk a lot about flexibility in there and adaptability in the programs. But we also mentioned, and I'll mention it again, so this is a national survey. It also included local market surveys, which included San Francisco, Dallas, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and New York City. This flexibility, adaptability, this is a national trend, but you also see some interesting, I want to say, local market kind of nuances on it. And, I'm thinking of Dallas in particular, where, a demand for flexibility was, kind of through the roof, which kind of makes sense given the expansion of, that Dallas-Fort Worth area. Marty, I can hear you in the background. What are you thinking? What's interesting you with this survey?
Well, what you're hearing me is writing notes on my tablet here. Steph, the idea of, you're talking about the work environment, what crossed my mind and what I've been hearing and reading and seeing a lot of is the idea of lighting. I guess they're referring to maybe natural lighting in the work environment. Is that addressed in the survey? And talk to me about that.
Absolutely. It is addressed in the survey. And that's one of the other fascinating points of the results is that for a third year in a row, natural light has popped as the most desired design element. And so this year, it rated kind of at 58%. We're saying that natural light is a must-have. And I'd actually say that, the survey takes it a little bit further of building a connection to accessibility to natural elements in the workplace. So natural light being one of them, as well as a visual connection to nature, a physical connection to nature, or even just kind of material connections to nature. But, I giggle because I feel like we've been talking about natural light in the workplace and opening up the window lines for 15 or 20 years. And while so many environments have that, it's still really important to people to be able to at least have a line of sight to what's going on outside.
Yeah, interesting.
It's so funny because I think some of this conversation around design and what's innovative and what we need to give people for success, the amenities, the perks, all this kind of stuff, that someone could be listening to this interview and think, oh my God, like I can't do any of that. I'm a small business or my company's not making enough money. But if the number one feature is natural light, it's like, can you open up the blinds? Like, can you democratize access to light? That's not asking people to put in slides and ping pong tables and have personal chefs. We're saying, people just want to connect with, the outside world, and that will make them feel better, which might get into this other question I got for you, Steph, because this was part of the 2019 survey that was really intriguing to me. Mental health and well-being rose to the forefront. Why do you think that's the case? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing it really emerge because people are openly talking about it. It is becoming part of the conversation. And so it's actually great because the way that we look at our associate base at Capital One is as kind of that well-rounded, holistic associate. And so we're wanting to make sure that we've got spaces to support the well-being. We've got the physical workplace and those different options. We have tools and then the benefits in partnership with HR. So benefits through that are the experiences that we're creating through our real estate teams. And so I think it's just more common and there's a heightened sense of awareness that's great, and making sure that as employers that we're able to support that for our associate base.
Kelly, if I could
go ahead, Marty.
Go ahead, Marty. Just because we're hearing an awful lot about this too. And again, I just answered this question generally. The idea of meditation, the idea of mindfulness, those kinds of things in the workplace, that's being talked a lot about too, Stephanie.
It absolutely is, Marty. And I think those are part of the optionality to provide in the workspace. And it can be done really easily without having to invest large dollars, just creating some dedicated spaces for mindfulness and without being overly prescriptive of how the room should be used. And then people can choose how they need to use that space to step away and have that flexibility to go use that.
I was going to say on all of this, is some of this generational? I think younger generations being more vocal about mental health issues that we might have thought were more taboo, and that's why that's kind of pumping to the forefront. Is it this 5 generations, as we mentioned in the first, our first interview, first episode of this 2-part conversation with you? Is it that generational openness and influence of their influence in the generation or in the workplace that's making this a conversation point?
I think absolutely. I think that the newer generations in the workforce, they are very socially aware and open. And what's great is it's driving the conversation and opening the door to be able to do that.
I was going to say, get people, as we mentioned before in our first interview, Lindsay Pollock, author of The Remix, has been a partner with you on this work environment survey. And go back to our Marty and my interview with Lindsay on The Remix and this whole concept of multi-generational workforce and some stuff in there. Are there any particular tools or amenities, essentials around mental health? Marty asked you about light. In sort of guiding other employers, things they should be thinking about as they look at their own workplaces?
Yeah, I think some of the other design elements that really popped were, natural light from a design element. Places for rest and relaxation was number 2, and that actually doubled year over year. So it jumped from 25% to 50% this year in the survey. But then we also saw really a pretty lengthy list of perks that associates and professionals desire to support well-being in the workplace. And so having those on-site healthy food and beverage options, those active break opportunities. How do you encourage movement throughout the day? Creating kind of those community and social areas for some of those natural collision points with maybe running into folks that you typically don't work with or you don't get to see on a normal cadence. And again, fitness centers, health centers, and kind of some of the other elements we talked about having those spaces for quiet, reflective areas, more mindfulness, and as well as actually environmental and sustainability programs, right? Kind of doing the right thing. Kind of all of this starts to connect to that well-rounded, holistic approach.
And people's well-being, because you said it with collision points, can you talk about the fact that there's no individual trash cans at Capital One for the associates?
That is a true statement. There are no trash cans. We were a very popular team when we took them away. But actually, folks got on board really quickly. So we do. Part of our sustainability efforts, it is centralized trash. And the way we were able to do that is by centralizing trash and recycle, shred, and composting in our locations, our office buildings. There's a couple benefits. One, it really supports the sustainability. And so people are being able to choose simultaneously like where things need to go. And we've got, signs and boxes with examples to help educate kind of what goes in which bucket, if you will. But some of the unintended benefits is by driving people to go throw away your trash. That's just creating movement throughout your day. And think about it. When you're at home, maybe, Kelly, you have a trash receptacle by your recliner in your TV room. If you do, I don't want to knock that. But most of us don't, right? That kind of more residential, how we live life outside of work is if we've got to throw away something and we're watching TV, we're going to pop into the kitchen or wherever our trash can is. And it creates that same movement. So a lot of it is a reflection of how we're living our lives outside of the four walls of the office building and bringing that in as well.
There's no trash can beside my recliner. So I can assure you,
if there was.
And just listening to that, and for listeners, if you're worried about creating more collaboration, if you're, where are those water cooler moments? Centralize the trash. Here's a really simple, innovative, improvement in your work environment if you want to get people working and meeting each other and moving around. So if they're feeling like they're chained to their desk, that's a great way. And let me remind listeners, there is a link to Capital One's 2019 Work Environment Survey in the show notes. I encourage you to take a look at that report. There's some really, really interesting findings, both on a national level and in 5 major markets. I'm sure some other employers think, oh, that's nice, Kelly. I don't think employees are going to think removing the trash can is innovative or a perk. But let's talk about perks. What are the top perks that employees want?
Well, top perks that they want healthy food on site. They are wanting those active break opportunities. And so that, may be a walking trail or just a treadmill desk, or maybe there's a bike share program, whether it's kind of in the community where your office space is, or the company is able to provide that. Some of the other environmental aspects or benefits that we saw emerge in the survey, and I think we've spent a little bit of time talking about that, is talent wants flexible schedules. We saw this year 81% of people wanted flexible schedules as one of those number one benefits, and then kind of looking at technology and health amenities as well being other really important dimensions to their workday.
Yeah, it's sort of funny thinking about, hey, I want to be productive, and here's a different way for me to do my work. It's sort of funny thinking that as a perk, because I think when we think perks, we think, well, maybe I'll speak from a New York perspective, and having worked in big firms, it was, we got, museum passes and, things like that. But perks, people are just saying, hey, give me something that'll allow me to be more productive. And I'm just saying, for any employees who are listening, having myself negotiated a alternative work schedule is, think about how your work is done, and how you serve your clients and how you collaborate with your coworkers, and, design and pitch a work, a flexible work schedule, that has that as its core. You might get what you want if your company already doesn't have one. And some of these perks, this is lead into this, Stephanie, some of these perks, these are things that employers should be thinking about because it's going to help them retain talent. there was some stuff in the survey this year. Can you talk about what are the workplace environment aspects that help keep talent? Because keeping good talent is, I got to be top on every employer's list of things.
Absolutely, because talent is great out there, and to be able to recruit and then retain them is paramount. And so those, we saw, again, 81% of the flexible schedules really rose to the top of a way to be able to retain talent. We also saw 40% of folks want health amenities, and I think we kind of dissected those a little bit ago of what those entailed. And then we also saw just kind of having those technology tools available. 31% of folks wanted the technology tools available to them. So whether that's digital signage or wayfinding, helping to navigate through the space, or collaboration tools, video conferencing or Zoom, or even just having the ability from a mobility of laptops and smartphones to support the mobility throughout the day. And then also what was interesting is that that commuting assistance, 32% of the respondents felt that commuting assistance was important. And I think that dovetails nicely into that desire for flexibility and recognizing that commuting patterns, and especially in these major markets, look very different. And so how can we support folks to do what they need to do and when and where?
Yeah, because I'm looking. Before you jump in, Marty, because I'm, again, remind people that this is a national survey looking at, but there's also individual surveys or survey markets: San Francisco, Dallas, Chicago, Washington D.C., and New York City. And I look at the list, and I'm, well, D.C. does have a subway and stuff, but I'm like, okay, out of those lists, my New York bias, New York's got some decent public transit. I mean, commuting assistance doesn't surprise me with some of these other markets where, I've been to Dallas. I've been out to your offices in Plano.
Right.
That's a drive.
It's a lovely drive. It's the way to, gear up for the day.
There you go. You relax on the trip, right? You relax.
Remember my New York bias of walking and taking the subway. I'm like,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's creating a natural element of rest and relaxation for you before you get to the office.
There you go. There you go.
They could listen to this podcast. There we go. What are you going to say, Marty?
Well, we alluded to it earlier. The idea that I guess this is more for younger people. I don't know. Your survey may have addressed this, but how important it is to these folks in terms of recruiting and retaining talent is that they want to do work that matters. They want to do work that matters for their community, for the world. Like the trash can idea is important. They want to do work that matters beyond making profit for the company. Profit is part of the bottom line, the triple bottom line, but doing work that matters, it makes a difference, does it not?
It absolutely does. And I think, while people are the heart of our company and of companies, when you are in a consumer industry, ultimately everything that we do is to support our customer base. Mm-hmm. And so I think creating the environments that allow people to care about the work with that customer in mind is really what helps differentiate.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, and knowing so many good folks at Capital One, I'm going to have to, some of them who are creating some of the consumer products, I'm going to have to bug them to come on the Business Builder show, so we can talk about how do they devise these and create these innovative, I'm going to say, consumer tools, banking tools, with all of that in mind. Steph, as we wind down this second interview, let's, you talked about this before, design trumps location, according to the survey. And I think that's really interesting because as your basis of part of what you do and your team does is real estate. And with real estate, it's always been, as you said, location, location, location. So if I was an employer listening to this conversation, what are design features that companies should be investing in? And, I'm happy with the mundane to the ridiculous of things that someone could do to improve their office design to make it more in line with what employees are seeking based on your survey.
Yeah, those design elements that we talked about, again, natural light. You hit the nail on the head. Just open the blinds. And if you've got the opportunity to go a little bit further and pull some of the hard wall structures off of the window line to really create the environment where the majority of the people have access to that, that's great. But it doesn't necessarily have to be done in a construction way, right? You can just creating visual connectivity or even just the physical access. So encouraging people to go outside and walk around the building and having programs. One of the neat elements is more behavioral than an actual design is in our company, people will do walking 1010s. And 1010s is a way that we talk about just checking in with either a colleague or your boss or a subordinate. And you'll see people doing walking 1010s and they're just walking around the building. And it's a way to create movement, but still have a meeting. And so I think there are design elements and then there are behavioral aspects as well. Other things that professionals want to see, they want to see that space for rest and relaxation. Like we said, that doubled this year as really an important design element. Individual work areas other than traditional workstations. We recognize that there are absolutely times throughout a day that you've got to have that heads down focused space or you need to take a private phone call. And so providing those more remote areas to drive people into those phone booths or kind of little library zones that are more of that heads down space. We talked a lot about the integration of that natural or the organic, the elements and the materials into the workplace. And then things that just kind of continue to really, I think, make it vibrant are bold colors, the reconfigurability of space for creating kind of multi-purpose uses, collaborative spaces. People are coming together real time, and the artwork and the creative imagery, creating and capturing the personality of the team or your company in your workspace really creates a sense of ownership.
I was going to say collaborative spaces. I mean, having worked in a big, law firm, trying to get a conference room and schedule those things could, be enough to make you want to light your hair on fire. But, if there had been, more places where you could, hey, let's go and have a meeting, rooms that could be used for multiple purposes rather than, you have to have it in a conference room, could have been much more collaborative and much more, collegial, having done that. And I was just thinking just
kind of in that, it's simple, right? Because a lot of those are hard-walled solutions, but throw a couple, big recliner chairs in an unused space and you've created a collaborative area. And you're optimizing space that may not have been used for something else.
Yeah, I was just going to hit on that too with this other, the people craving individual work areas. That doesn't mean a desk or a cubicle. And I know that you've done some fun things with what otherwise would have been wasted space. And I sort of say that, because it was like a funny corner or a little piece of something here where you could, stick a comfortable chair or a nook for someone to curl in with their laptop.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw in the survey that, 77% of professionals say that they perform better when they have that collaboration space, and 88% of the folks say that it's also to have that space for focus. And I think, what that really signals is that finding that right balance between space types to support all of the work styles. But you're absolutely right, Kelly. It's finding those kind of Easter eggs, if you will, in the workspace or in the environment, or just watching behaviors. So if people are taking phone calls in stairwells, they need privacy. Well, hey, let's provide some phone booths that they can then use that space differently, or kind of floor plates have odd little kind of points and nooks and crannies, and so creating space that will become destination space so people can choose how they work.
So cool. Marty, you got any other thoughts?
Wow, just a great information. I think we hit so many great points. It's so valuable for all our listeners, Kelly.
So, Stephanie, I want to thank you again for not coming on the Business Builders this time, but coming on twice to talk to us about, first of all, your role as Vice President Workplace Solutions at Capital One, but really diving into this 2019 Work Environment Survey. There's all sorts of juicy stuff in here. that we have not even dived into. So for all of our listeners, there is a link in the show notes to the survey, and there is a national aspect to it. Also, some really cool market-specific findings with respect to Chicago, Dallas, District of Columbia, New York City, and San Francisco. So if you're in any of those markets, you really want to dive in and see what's going on and what employees are really seeking in your particular market. Steph, thank you again, and promise us you'll come back sometime in the future on the Business Builder Show.
Thanks so much. I'd love to return.
Thank you so much for listening to the Business Builder Show. To learn more about me, and I'm Marty Wolff, go to MartyWolffBusinessSolutions.com. That's MartyWolffBusinessSolutions.com. To learn more about Kelly Hoey, go to her website, which is jkellyhoey.co. That's jkellyhoey.co. And of course, you can find Kelly and Marty on LinkedIn and Twitter. A reminder, you can find all our Business Builders shows on iTunes, Spotify, and on your favorite podcast app.
Bringing the business classroom to you. It's the Business Builders Show with Marty Wolff.